will stop. It had been nearly 6 years since Ryan visited back home in Wazuka, Japan. Ever since he had moved out for college and traveled to America, he had kept his distance from his father. Even as a child, Ryan had always been a little detached from him, as his father was a rather strange and peculiar man. He always had an odd fascination with cats, and since Ryan had left, his father was living all alone in this bungalow, perhaps with the old servant, Ito-san, in whose care Ryan had grown up. If it were not for the letter Ryan had recently gotten from home, he wouldn't have made this journey. His father had been ill for some time, and with his deteriorating health, he wished to meet Ryan. It was a long flight from New York to Japan, and then a long drive from the city to the small mountain town of Wazuka. Ryan reached the Okasaki bungalow and parked the car. Almost instantly, he spotted Ito-san hurrying out the door. "Okasaki-kun, finally, you're here." "Ito-san, how many times will I tell you? Call me Ryan. It's been so long since you left. Let's go in, let me help you with your bags." As Ryan and Ito grabbed the bags from the trunk, he was a little startled seeing a cat brush past his leg. "Haven't seen this one before. Father has still been keeping these cats?" "You know how he is. They keep him company. Master Okasaki has been alone since..." Ito let out a deep breath, lost in his reminiscence. He then smiled and patted Ryan on the back. "He's waiting for you." Entering the old bungalow again, Ryan stared at the familiar decor. The old lanterns still hung in their place, the paintings where they had always been. Ryan climbed the stairs and slowly looked into his father's room. He sighed as yet another cat slipped out the door. He could see his father sitting by the window. Hearing the door slide open, Haruto Okasaki turned slowly in much relief to see his son. "Ryan, I'm glad you came." Ryan walked towards him. He could see his father was no longer the man he used to be before. His body had shrunken, dark circles under his eyes. He looked much pale. "Come, sit with me. How are things in America?" "Everything is fine. I heard you got engaged. You didn't bring her?" "No, father. The trip was so sudden. Leave that. How are you feeling?" "Son, I probably will not live much longer. Have the doctors visited?" "And what will the doctors do? When the time is here, there is no preventing it." Ryan silently listened. He knew there was no use talking to his father about anything. He had always had the strangest beliefs. "When I die, do not let my body be buried in the cemetery." He looked out into the backyard. "I have made a burial vault behind the bungalow. Place me there and bring a monk to do the funeral ritual for 6 consecutive nights before you secure it forever, so I can rest in peace alone." Ryan looked out in bewilderment. Had this man gone mad? He had dug his own grave behind the house? "Father, it's 1980, and you still believe in all this? Promise me you will do as I say." Looking into his sullen eyes, Ryan said, "Yes, father." The first night at the bungalow, Ryan walked out to the patio to catch some air. The weather was mildly cold in Wazuka. The backyard had been covered in a deep, foggy mist. "Ryan, how is everything over there?" "It's alright, but Father's not doing too well. He hasn't seen a doctor and he probably won't. Maybe you can make some arrangements." "Yeah, I was thinking tomorrow. What about you? Are you okay?" "Yeah, just missing you." As Ryan spoke to Anna, Ito walked out. "Okasaki-kun, your dinner has been served. I'll be in a while." After a walk in the backyard and speaking with Anna, Ryan returned inside. As he sat down at the chabudai, he stared at the sukiyaki and miso soup just like he used to have when he was a boy. Ryan had his dinner and went straight to bed, planning the next day. He fell asleep quite fast, but towards dawn, he heard a sudden knock on his door. He woke up startled and opened to see it was Ito, a look of dread on his face as he held the lantern. "Is everything all right? Your father, Master Okasaki, is no more." Haruto Okasaki had passed away in his sleep. Despite how odd their relationship had always been, Ryan felt heavy-hearted. Early that morning, he arranged for the funeral. As his father had requested, a monk had been brought to perform his rites, and Haruto Okasaki was placed in the burial vault out in the woods behind his bungalow. A storm is nearing. This isn't a good sign. We must leave. It was in the middle of the ritual. The monk had suddenly looked up to the skies, hearing the thunder. He looked frightened by something. What sign? It's held inauspicious if a storm begins during a funeral. It presages evil. These superstitions, Ryan murmured. But when the rain began to pour and the winds picked up, they didn't have a choice but to leave. After a long day, when Ryan returned home, he found his room empty. As he was about to call Ito, the old man hurried to him. "Where are my things?" "I shifted your things to your father's room." "Why, there was no need for that. With your father no more, you are now the master, Okasaki-kun." Reluctant yet exhausted, Ryan nodded as he went up to his father's bedroom. Laying down on the bed, he listened to the pitter-patter of the rain and the thunder roaring ever so often. Once these 6 days were over, he would return home, he thought, as he drifted off. "No, I can't take it. I can't take it. Father?" "Ryan, sacrifice the cat. Relieve me from this misery. Sacrifice the cat." Ryan woke up startled, his heart pacing rapidly. What a dream. Drinking a glass of water, he tried to forget and go back to sleep. But he lay awake the whole night. The next day, the weather had only worsened, and the monk refused to come to the Okasaki bungalow, although the funeral ritual had to be held. Ryan eventually had to put it aside, planning to complete whatever had to be done once the storm subsided. The second night, as Ryan tried to get some rest, he woke up again to the same dream. Why am I seeing this? Again, supposing his mind had been stressed with all that had happened in these past days. The next morning, Ryan went to his father's study, looking around, pondering on the nightmares. Could there really be any meaning? Or was he being delusional as well? Looking through the shelves, Ryan skimmed through his father's collection. Shoo. Reaching his table, he opened up the drawers. There was a dagger inside one of them. As he checked it out, he noticed some jars inside. What is this? In it were sharp and pointed pearls. Looking closely, Ryan suddenly put it down, realizing they were cat's teeth. He moved on through the books on the table when he noticed a bookmark kept in one. He opened it up to see a strange picture of a cat. The book looked ancient. The Kasha, a cat yokai, an entity, a spirit that appears upon death, bringing on harsh lightning and rain, a storm that will not end till it has taken what it has come for. It torments the dead for the evil deeds it had done, taking with it the soul that is damned to hell. Nonsense. Ryan closed the book. He had enough of this. It was partly the reason he had to leave this house, leave his father. He spent much of the day trying to relieve his mind. However, again, when night fell and he tried to sleep, he saw the same dream, saw his father in that condition, pleading to him, "Sacrifice the cat. Relieve me from this misery. Sacrifice the cat." This time, Ryan couldn't rid the anxiety. What is happening to me? Ryan turned startled to a meow of a cat in the room. He stared at it, suddenly realizing the matter. The storm had started that day. The monk had sensed something. He didn't complete the ritual, and the storm, it hasn't stopped in 4 days. The legend, the kasha, the jar, the nightmares, it had to have some meaning. Was his father being tormented? Maybe, if the cat is sacrificed, he would be spared from this entity. That night, in his anxiety, Ryan went to his father's study and took out the dagger from the drawer. As his heart raced, he caught the cat and left the house. If this would bring an end to whatever had started, he had to do so. He walked straight towards the woods, where was the burial vault. The cat wrung in his hands, but Ryan held on tight. However, just as he was to enter the woods, he suddenly heard a sound. He saw a flash of light glimmer before he realized there stood something ahead of him. The kasha? Where are you going? To relieve my father. To relieve a sinner? A killer? Ryan froze as those fiery eyes stared into his. This couldn't be real. This had to be a hallucination. Do you know who your father killed? Look into my eyes, Ryan. Look. Mother? It was nearly 30 years ago when Haruto Okasaki had met Elois Williams. She was a foreigner and had settled with her family in Japan due to her father's business. Elois and Haruto fell in love and soon got married. 2 years into their marriage, they had their son Ryan and were living a happy life. Mother, this is spicy. Sukiyaki and miso soup. Drink up, Ryan, it's good for you. The first time you had this, you had gone red from the spice, Elois. Their little family was perfect. But as the initial years passed by, Alois started to notice some things about Haruto. He had caught on to drinking and often would misbehave in his sudden fits of rage. "Haruto, this is getting out of hand. It's affecting your health, our lives. Have I not given you enough? What more do you want? Haruto, I want you to stop this." It was one night when Alois tried to speak him out of his horrible habits. Things became heated, and Alois became a victim to Haruto's rage. When Haruto returned to his senses, he was grieved by what he had done. But making it seem as an accident, he covered up his deed. However, it was since then that the guilt began to torment him, and in fear of what he would have to face in his afterlife, he turned to pleasing the Gasha. Every year he would raise and care for the cats himself, only to sacrifice them to Gasha as a means of protection for himself of his evil doing. Everything flashed before his eyes as Ryan endured the memories. Your father is a sinner. As he returned to his senses, he looked around. He was alone. He looked at the cat in his arms, wringing to escape. He stared far out to where his father lay. After what he had done, he didn't deserve this. Ryan let the cat go as it ran off into the woods. Enjoy your misery.
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.